Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. This is a picture dated March 24th, 2020 of my Graviflyer um, replication, I guess you'd try and call it. There's a Townsend Brown experiment to the right. It's been very successful. We'll get to that a little later. Achieved lots of vibration and movement on the floor with the replication, which you can see in the back there on the oscilloscope. Never achieved any lift. Continued studying and beating my head against a brick wall, trying to really wrap my head around some of the conceptual things that are going on here. And came across this book. This is in regards to Faraday's homopolar generator, or the Faraday paradox. We'll get to that in another video too. What's interesting is this little comment about Roentgen. I hope I pronounced his name correct. The guy who took credit for the X-ray when it should have gone to Tesla. Anyway, remember that W.C. Roentgen rotated a dielectric between charged capacitor plates and found that it developed a magnetic field. Let's check out this image here. Let me pull it on up. This image of Chekhorov's device. Let me bring in my chopstick pointer. Sorry for the crude demonstration. This doesn't look like metal to me. This looks like plastic. Kind of burnt plastic. Clad in something. With some research, it kind of seems like, just to be optimistic, this could be gray tin, like actual tin foil. Gray tin is diamagnetic. Okay, let's think about that, right? So you're holding the dielectric still. But you're rotating the plates of the capacitor, right? Top is positive, bottom is negative, apparently. Well, let's talk about electrets for a moment. How do you make an electret? You take a piece of plastic, seems to be the bitchin' choice these days. You take a piece of plastic and you heat it up in a high-strength electric field, right? So let's say you make those two plates, two pieces of tin foil with your high voltage power supply hooked to those, right? Heat it up to almost liquid, let it cool in high strength electric field, right? Thus making an electret, which is the electrostatic equivalent to a magnet, right? So then if you move further up on the Wikipedia page, you find this very interesting point about electrets. When a magnet and an electret are near one another, a rather unusual phenomenon occurs. While stationary, neither have any effect on one another. However, when the electret is moved with respect to a magnetic pole, a force is felt which acts perpendicular to the magnetic field, right? Pushing the electret along 90 degrees to the magnetic field. Let's look at this really quick here. We've all stared at this diagram for quite a while. So in a standard homopolar generator, this disk would be within a magnetic field. So north-south, again, north-south. Whether the magnets are attached to the disk or not, so-called electron flow happens from the center of the disk out to the rim with this rotation, right? The center of the disk, or the axle itself, becomes positive, and the so-called electrons are picked up from the rim. We'll get into all that in another video. Well, that kind of brings up the issue of this orientation with Chekhov as described as north on the top, south on the bottom. Now, if you look at the response of the electret to a magnetic field, what if you have the south pole facing out and the north pole facing in, right? Thus you would achieve a perpendicular force on this central plate. The south pole of the magnet would again deflect our so-called electron down, and this is questionable depending on which hemisphere you're in. And let's look into that a little bit. And so I've replicated this whole diagram. There's some issues here, but there's also some interesting observation that this could be an actual bipolar supply. We'll get to that later. So down here, we got some issues here. This is drawn as a PNP transistor, right? Pointing in. This part number, however, is an NPN, not pointing in. This actually does work if you put the emitter at the top, right? And wired this up, and it does work that way. However, I think Alexei drew this incorrectly. This arrow actually points out, right? Not pointing in. If you look at Alexei's very first video, he pulls out a notebook which has this very circuit drawn in it, and it's drawn as an NPN. It's also wired to a catcher, the very same one that he uses to fly his Graviflyer. All right. There's also some interesting issue with these two rotations. I mean, if you're looking down from the top of the device, both of these disks are actually rotating in the same direction. If you look into Townsend Brown's number 4 lab notebook, which you can find on the Townsend Brown family website, and it's also described by Alexei in Victor Schauberger's device, the center disk is positive, the bottom disk is negative, and the top disk is negative. In Townsend Brown's notebook, number 4, they achieved much more thrust with this orientation, negative, positive, negative. All right. This brings up kind of another discrepancy. Also, the Earth is negatively charged. You would get repulsion from like charges, right? If the atmosphere, ionosphere, is positively charged, and the top plate were also negative, you would get attraction. The electrode chases each other. So I have some questions about this and the usefulness of this. So I'm going to leave it right there. Kind of went a little further than I'd like. I have been telepathically trying to communicate this to all of us weirdos who've been working on this, beating our heads against the wall. I backed up and started doing more research, and of course it brings up more questions about the actual way that this thing is built. Does not look like metal. So you would almost get a triple effect. You have Roentgen's discovery that the piece of dielectric produces a magnetic field in between two capacitor plates. However, in this one, the capacitor plates would be rotating in regards to the dielectric. But then if you clad it in a diamagnetic material, and you have magnets rotating underneath it, perhaps in the correct orientation, south facing out, north facing in, you're getting a triple effect there. Plastic becomes magnetic. The electret opposes the magnetic field underneath it at 90 degrees. And then the disc, which has become magnetic, is also clad in tin, which is diamagnetic. All right, I think that's enough. Thanks for watching, and we'll be continuing with another video of some other discrepancies and observations. Appreciate it.